Welcome back, happy fabricators. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 different ways to feed your TIG filler rod and 2 different ways to perfect those methods. And one of them is building this little contraption here. Okay, so the first TIG filler rod feeding method we're going to call the beginner method. I have a chunk of TIG wire here and I put some little pieces of tape on it so that you can kind of see it a little better as we go along with this video and show you these methods. But the beginner method is often adopted by beginners because it's just like the first kind of easiest thing to do. And the way this is usually executed is you grab your piece of filler metal up here and then you take your joint and you dab 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 until you get all the way down and you get so close to your weld puddle that you'll burn your gloves. I don't often prefer or encourage this method. If it's what you have to do in the beginning just because it's the most comfortable, do it just to get started. But I will highly encourage you to do one of the other methods that I'm going to show you in a little bit. Reason being, the first reason is with this method, you have to grab, to do any sort of length of weld, you have to grab further back on the rod, which makes it harder to pinpoint and hit the edge of the puddle accurately because you have a longer distance and it's just harder to hit that clean edge. The second reason it's harder to be consistent with this method is you have to control 1, 2, 3 separate joints at the same time. You're controlling your shoulder, your elbow, your wrist, and even your fingers a little bit. And when you have to keep track of all those joints and try to pinpoint them into one spot, it's just more for your brain to deal with and more margin for error. The third reason is, like I kind of mentioned before, is it doesn't allow you to do long continuous welds long term. And if you have to grasp this and go down and stop and repick, it's going to be harder to make a long, even, consistent weld. You're going to try to get to the end of that and you're going to end up burning your gloves, which is also going to make it harder in the long run to weld if the ends of your gloves are singed and you don't have as much tactile feedback on the end of your rod because you have hard burnt tips on your gloves. So that brings us to method number 2 of feeding our TIG filler rod, and we're going to call this the standard method just because it's the most commonly used. How you achieve the standard method is you take your rod and you pinch it between your pointer and your middle finger, and then you lock it down with your thumb right here. So we've got it right between our pointer and middle finger, and then we're going to clamp it down with our thumb just like that. This method is pretty versatile. You can feed it a couple different ways. You can either take your pointer and index finger and you can plant with your thumb, you can squeeze back and then pull forward. Plant with your thumb, squeeze back, pull forward. Let's look at that from the other side. So we plant with our thumb, pull our index and pointer back and pull forward. And you can see the blue dots moving right along there like that. The other way that you can do this is you can plant with your index and middle finger and push with your thumb. So plant, push. Just like so. So you can adopt either one or both of the ways to do the standard one. I usually kind of push with my thumb like this. You see it kind of feeding out there. But sometimes when you're welding aluminum, you need to get that filler metal into the puddle real fast and then pull it back out before you move on so you don't melt the tip of your rod off. So I will push with my thumb and then I will pull back with my index and middle finger and then push with my thumb and pull back to achieve that motion to get the best results there. Now the other benefit to this position is, like I said, when you're using the standard method and you're all the way back here, you're moving all these joints and it's hard to get accuracy. This method allows you to use blocks or rests. So what I like to do is plant the edge of my fist onto a block. Let's say I have my weld down here, and now I can feed with just my fingers and my whole hand is isolated. I'm not controlling my shoulder joint, I'm not controlling my elbow joint, and I'm using my wrist to move it, but it has a rest. So you only have like half the concentration there because you're not holding your wrist in suspension, you are just aiming it, and for the most part it's staying where you put it. So you can sit there and feed just like that and have much greater accuracy. Now we're going to call the third TIG filler rod method the index feed. So if you don't prefer to have your TIG wire between your index and your middle finger, the way you achieve your index feed is you lay your filler wire between your middle finger and your fourth finger, and then we pinch it with our thumb and our index finger. So something like this. So you're basically doing the same thing with different fingers. We're clamping with our middle and our fourth finger, and we are feeding with our thumb and our index finger. So you can see how that works here. You're going through like that and just feeding along the same way. You can see that wire moving through there. Now this method still allows you to have a rest and isolate all these joints for that higher amount of accuracy, and allows you to stay that certain distance away without burning your gloves. So that optimal distance on any of these is, in my opinion, between kind of 6 and 8 inches. So between 6 and 8 inches, you still have really good control over the tip of your rod, but you're far enough away that you're less likely to burn up those gloves. Now, while we're here with these stop blocks, another little trick that I use sometimes if I'm welding like aluminum and having something really hot is I really like these 1, 2, 3 blocks. But I will lay one down and I will stand one up like this. And what that does is that shields my glove from the heat. So if I'm welding here, I can feed just over the top of that. All that heat is down here and it's going up, bouncing off the face of this block and allowing me to shield my hand and my glove as I'm feeding it. So that's another great reason to use that standard or that index feed, because you can weld, especially if you're doing some high amperage aluminum, the heat just really will soak into your gloves and stuff. And you can use this little dam here and just feed and feed and feed, and then you can move it around to a different position and do the same thing. So the index method is not my favorite, but I have seen several people use it, and it's definitely a good option to still achieve that rest and get some good accuracy. Now the fourth and final method is the Kane method. Now it's been kind of dubbed the Kane method because of Rush Kane. He's a very good welder. I think his Instagram is Kane Kid. You can check him out. I'll leave it down in the description below. But good guy, excellent welder. But he's adopted this method where you take and you hold your wire with both your thumb and your fourth finger, and then you take your index and your middle finger and use that as your feed rod. So you're going to be feeding the rod something to this effect. Now this also still allows you to get that wrist rest. I'm a huge advocate, if at all possible, using a rest off of either your wrist or your pinky finger, and I'll show you that trick in just a second here. It's not my favorite for everyday use like Rush uses it for, but I do find it handy when you're doing inside corner joints on like angle or something from the top down. So let's say you have an inside corner joint like this, and it's really hard to get down there. You can get your torch down at an angle and you can come straight in from the top and do that vertical weld. And this method allows you to feed from a top-down position, stay out of the way of your torch, and still get that nice, smooth motion. And maybe you could set up a prop even and support that wrist. Always support that wrist if all possible. And then get down there and feed it like so. Now back to that pinky rest that I mentioned just a second ago. Another good reason to use this standard method is it allows you to do this pinky rest. I found it super helpful, especially when welding around tubing or roll cages. You can rest your pinky on the tube, and then you can feed and pivot off your pinky and roll around that tube. So now if you're using that standard method, you're all the way back here. It's a 120 wall roll cage, so the diameter of that puddle is not much bigger than 1/8 of an inch, and you're trying to be accurate and get this post in there, and you're moving all of these joints and trying to get them to hit that tiny spot. Whereas if you can get this down, that standard method, you're going to either rest your pinky directly on the tube, maybe you're going to clamp a pair of pliers on there so that you can get maybe 2 or 3 inches further back so you're not burning your glove. And then you are going to feed that rod and pivot around the tube as you continually feed that rod and make that seamless, beautiful weld. So what is the best, fastest, most efficient way to master these TIG rod feeding methods? First off, I highly recommend you drag a piece of rod home and a welding glove, right or left, whatever side you feed with. And every time you sit down to watch a TV show or a movie, stick this thing in your hand and just feed it. The more you do it, the better at it you're going to get. And why I really advocate for doing it while you're watching a TV show or something like that is it makes it second nature and just something that you're doing on the backside of your brain. You're sitting there doing it, but you're still paying attention to the show. And when you're welding, you want that to be the same thing. You want to be concentrating on how the puddle's flowing and not concentrating on how the mechanics of your hand are working to get that filler rod into the puddle. So if you can make feeding rod just second nature and do it thoughtlessly while you're watching a TV show, just do it the whole time. Go through the whole rod like this, feed it back. And if you can make that second nature, it's definitely gonna up your game. And the second most efficient way to learn how to feed your TIG filler rod is going to be the TIG filler rod game, which we're gonna build right now. And if any of you are familiar with the game Operation, I bet you can see where this is going. Okay, so supplies you will need for this build. We need a piece of filler rod. I recommend using mild steel and 16th inch because that's just going to be kind of the most common rod out there to be used. You're gonna need some 2-inch wide flat bar. I'm gonna use these coupons from Weld Metals Online. It's just gonna be super quick and convenient because they're already the right size and we don't have to cut any material. And if you already have these, that's great. If not, use coupon code AMCF10 at checkout and you'll get 10% off of them. Second thing you'll need is about 2 feet of small gauge wire, somewhere between like 20 to 22 gauge would be great. You're gonna need a small LED light in the range of about 3 to 5 volts. You're gonna need a way to connect all your wires together. Now you can just twist them together if you're gonna be on a budget. I love these little Wago things because you just stick the wire inside, click it down, and you're good and clamped. And they're great for prototyping stuff and great for little projects like this. Third thing you're gonna need is an alligator clamp. You can also veto this one if you're really on a budget by just twisting your wire around. Fourth thing you're gonna need is a battery pack. I got the 3 AA pack so that you get about 4.5 volts out of that. You're gonna need some wire strippers, a drill motor or drill press, and a stepper bit or a Unibit, or just a set of drill bits in general. First thing you're gonna do is take your 2-inch aluminum flat bar and cut 3 pieces to 4 inches in length. Or if you're using the Weld Metals Online coupons, you just pull 3 of them out of the package. Now for this project, you can use any of the other alloys, mild steel, stainless steel. I just chose aluminum because it's gonna be the easiest to drill my holes into. Once you have all 4 of your 4-inch long pieces cut out, yes, 4, I lied earlier, you need 4. We want to measure 2 inches up from there, and if you use 2-inch material, an easy way to do that is just lay this part perpendicular to your other parts and mark across them. Next, I'm going to make 2 marks equally apart from each other on both pieces. Doesn't have to be super precise. And then I'm going to use these marks to drill out 4 holes in sequence of largest to smallest. Doesn't really matter which size you pick. I think I'm gonna go with a 3/4 inch hole, a 5/8 hole, a 3/8 hole, and probably a 3/16 hole, because realistically, on a lot of small welds, that's the window that you're gonna hit on the edge of that weld puddle. Once your holes are drilled, we can wipe down our coupons with a little bit of acetone to clean them up if you used lubricant for drilling. If not, Weld Metals Online coupons are already wiped before they go in the package, so they're ready to weld. Next, I'm going to lay my pieces of aluminum out in this configuration and prep these edges with either a stainless wire brush or a blue fine rotolock, and weld them out in this configuration. And when you're done, it should look something like this. Don't worry if this part is not perfectly square. In fact, it's almost gonna be better if it's slightly tilted out, because when you're feeding around, it's mostly down at a downward angle, and this will help you out a little bit. This one could be more square, but it doesn't matter that much either. I love these little Weld Metals Online coupons, and yes, it seems like I'm plugging them a lot, but I'm not sponsored by them. They just make a good product that I use around the shop, and I really appreciate it. But this episode is sponsored by yours truly, me, because I don't have another sponsor. So if you'd like to help me out at no expense to you, the best thing that you could do that would mean a lot to me is if you share this video with a friend, like, comment, and subscribe to it. It'll help grow the channel and help me be able to make more videos like this. Who knows, you might have a friend that would like to make this little game as well. Okay, so after you got your little bracket thingy welded up, Next thing we're gonna do is assemble all of our electronics. So first off, we're gonna strip all our wires. I'm gonna take my black alligator clamp, connect that to the negative side of my battery pack, like so. Cover it up with some tape. Now what I'd love to do is use these on all of them. These are little called Wago connectors, and they're great for prototyping and building quick little stuff like this. You can just slide your end in there, flip it down, and it's nice and clamped in. Take your other wire for your LED light, slip it in, clamp that down, and you have a nice secure connection. I'll leave a link to these, but unfortunately I only have one left, so we're just gonna have to do it the budget-friendly way and twist the rest of these together. Once you have your light connected to your battery pack, we're gonna take our longer, roughly 2-foot section of wire, and we're going to twist that onto the other side of the light. Man, I wish I had more of these Wago connectors. So once you have your little aluminum bracket welded up and you have your little wired contraption here, the first thing we're gonna do is alligator clamp our wiring to the contraption here. I'm gonna use a couple of 1, 2, 3 blocks, one inside to weight it down so it doesn't move on me, and then one on the back as a rest. Depending on how big your hands are, you might not need the rest, because we're gonna be coming in at it like this. We're going to switch our power on, stick our gloves on so that we are practicing in a real world scenario, because we're going to be wearing gloves and our proper PPE when we're welding. Next, you're going to take the end of your long wire and feed it through your filler wire so it can just kind of slide on there. This is going to allow it to not be all the way out on the end and kind of impede the weight. We got our wire on the back here. Flip our power on and make sure we have conductivity. And our light turns on. So now the challenge is on. We're gonna see if we can make the full filler rod, well, I already turned it on, go through my 5/8 hole. Actually, that's probably more like a 3/4 inch hole. Realistically, because you're on a downward slope, you're probably not gonna get to that. So what I'd probably do is stick a piece of tape on there or something like that so that you know when you're like 8 inches through or something like that. See if we can make it all the way through. Ah, I touched it. We're about 8 inches through. Try the 1/2 inch hole. This is harder than it looks. Sweet, made about 8 inches through the 1/2 inch hole. See if we can do the 3/8 hole. It's actually hard to do without something else in my hand. Need my TIG torch in this hand. Ah, there, I touched it. And then we can go for the 3/16 hole. So I need to get my approach angle down just a little bit further. That one could be really tricky. I know it could be done. Another fun thing that you could do to add to this is, I'll see if I can find one and drop a link down below, but you could also stick a buzzer on this in addition to or in place of the light so it beeps at you, kind of like the Operation game did. I don't recommend making it shock you, but that could make things a little more lively. Now, if you're intimidated by this, this is all really low voltage stuff and it's gonna be really hard to get shocked by it. But do your own due diligence on that end of things. Overall, this is a really fun project to build with somebody. It's a really fun contest. If you got coworkers at work, maybe put an 1/8 inch mark on this thing, bring it there and see how many of you guys can make it through all 4 sizes without setting off the buzzer or turning the light on. Now, if you do happen to make one of these, I would love to see how yours turns out. So make sure to tag me on Instagram at amcustomfab and show me how it turned out. There's definitely some things that could be sanitized on this thing, especially electrical. You could do like a little 3D printed enclosure or something like that. You could add a buzzer to it. Hopefully you guys like this project. I will leave links to all the tools and items that I use to make this project happen. If you guys want to see more fabrication content, click some of the links that are going to pop up here. If you want to be notified of upcoming videos, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. It's free to do so, and go build something, guys.